Hey, future CPAs, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a topic from ObliCon that trips up so many people on the board exam. What happens when a debt involves a whole group of people? It sounds simple, but trust me, knowing the difference between joint and solidary is absolutely critical. So let's break it all down. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a simple problem, then unpack the law's default setting, which is joint obligations. After that, we'll look at the powerful exception, solidary obligations. Then we'll dive into the solidary showdown to see how the rules really work, and we'll wrap it all up with a rapid-fire LEKCPA bullet review. You're going to want to screenshot that part. Let's go. All right, let's kick things off with a scenario you are practically guaranteed to see in some form. You've got multiple people, one debt. Seems easy enough, right? Well, this is where the law gets very, very specific, and understanding those specifics is key. So picture this. You have A, B, and C. Together, they owe 30,000 pesos to X. Now, X needs the money and decides to go straight to A to collect. The question is, how much can X actually legally demand from just A? Is it the whole 30 grand or just a third of it? What's your gut feeling?
If you had an instant answer, hold that thought, because in law, the correct answer is almost always it depends. And in this case, it completely depends on the kind of obligation they have. This one detail changes everything.
So first up, let's talk about the law's default setting. You know, like on your phone or computer program, if a contract involving multiple people doesn't say anything specific about how they're liable, the law automatically assumes one thing, and that assumption is called a joint obligation. And where do we get this from? Boom, Article 1208 of the Civil Code. It says that in a joint obligation, the debt is basically chopped up into equal pieces. Each person is only on the hook for their own slice of the pie. The law just presumes it's divided equally among all the debtors. Honestly, the easiest way to remember this is to think about splitting the bill when you go out with friends. Everyone chips in for their own order, right? You pay your share, and that's it. You're not expected to cover for your friend who forgot their wallet. That's a joint obligation in a nutshell. So let's circle back to our question. If that 30,000 peso debt is joint, X can only demand 10,000 pesos from A. That's it, not a peso more. A's debt is separate from B's and C's. If X wants the full amount, they have to go after B and C individually for their shares. It's more work for the creditor. But what if the creditor is smarter? What if they want more security? Well, that brings us to the powerful exception to the rule, the solidary obligation. If a joint obligation is to each his own, a solidary obligation is basically the Three Musketeers motto, one for all and all for one. This is a total game changer. Just look at those words, entire, whole. With a solidary obligation, the creditor can pick any one of the debtors, maybe the richest one, and demand they pay the full amount. There's no bill splitting here. One person can be held responsible for the whole thing. Now, here's the golden rule you have to remember for the boards. Solidarity is special. It is never presumed. It has to be established in one of three ways. Either the contract clearly says so, a specific law requires it, or the very nature of the agreement implies it. If none of those are present, it's not solidary. Okay, let's put them head to head. This chart makes it super clear. Joint is the default, solidary is the exception. Joint means you pay your proportionate share. Solidary means you could pay the entire thing. In a joint obligation, you have separate debts, but in a solidary one, it's like one giant solid block of debt. All right, buckle up. We're now entering the solidary showdown. This is where the trickiest exam questions come from, so you'll want to pay close attention. We're talking about the real-world consequences and effects of a solidary obligation. Okay, let's meet our new squad, Bianca, Faye, and Zoe. And here's the key. They solidarily owe 5,000 pesos to Jeff. Jeff comes knocking, and Bianca, being the responsible one, pays him the whole 5,000. So, Jeff is happy he's got his cash. Is his story over? Not even close. Now the real drama begins, but it's between the friends. The big question is, what can Bianca do now? What are her rights against Faye and Zoe? And Article 1217 has her back. Once Bianca pays the full debt, she gains a new right, the right to claim reimbursement from her co-debtors. The original solidary obligation to Jeff is gone, but a new joint obligation is born among the debtors. Bianca basically gets to step into Jeff's shoes and collect from Faye and Zoe. Ah, but of course, the board exam loves to throw a curveball. What happens if Bianca goes to Faye, but Faye is insolvent, meaning she's broke, no money, no assets? Does Bianca just have to absorb that loss? Nope. And this is a huge deal. The law is clear. In a solidary obligation, the share of an insolvent debtor is covered by all the other co-debtors. So Faye's share gets split between the remaining solvent debtors, Bianca and Zoe. They both have to chip in to cover for her. This is a massive difference from a joint obligation, where it wouldn't be their problem at all. Now for another tricky area, remission. That's just a fancy legal term for forgiveness of debt. Check out this line from Article 1219. I know it's super wordy and confusing, but it's about what happens when the creditor forgives one person's share, but someone else has already paid the full debt. So what on earth does that mean? Let's simplify it. Imagine Jeff tells Zoe, hey, don't worry about your share, it's forgiven. But before Zoe hears the good news, Bianca has already paid Jeff the full $5,000. Does Zoe get off scot-free? No, because the payment happened before the remission took effect. Zoe is still on the hook, not to Jeff, but to Bianca. She has to reimburse Bianca for her share. Timing is everything. Phew, that was a lot, I know. So let's lock all this information in with a quick review. Seriously, get your phone out because you're going to want to put these next slides in your digital reviewer. Screenshot mode on. Here it is, your ultimate cheat sheet. Presumption. Joint is the default, solitary is the special exception. Liability. Proportionate versus the entire amount. Insolvency. This is a big one. For joint, an insolvent debtor is not your problem. For solitary, you got to help cover their share. And hey, don't forget those other key terms. They might try to trick you with mancomunata solidaria or jointly and severally. They all mean solitary. And to really make this stick, here are some memory hacks. For joint, think of the joints in your fingers. They're connected, but they're separate parts. For solidary, just think of the word solid. It's one solid, unbreakable unit. And please burn this into your brain. The law's default is always joint. If you don't see those magic words, you can safely assume it's a joint obligation. All right, one final thought to put your new CPA brain to the test. A client comes to you for advice. They're about to lend a huge amount of money to a startup with 3 partners. From your client's perspective, the one lending the money, what kind of obligation should they insist on in the contract? Joint or solidary? Why? Think about risk and who this protects more. When you can answer that confidently, you know you've mastered this. That's all for today. Good luck with your studies.